OCO, and welcome to the 72nd Cherokee National Holiday Quilt Show. My name is Deborah Harrell, and I am the Quilt Show Coordinator, and I'm truly honored to stand before you today at the Chota Conference Center in beautiful Tahlequah, Oklahoma. As we gather to admire the intricate tapestries of fabric, color, and stories, I want to take a moment to express our heartfelt gratitude to those who have made this event possible. Our Principal Chief, Chuck Hoskin Jr., and Deputy Chief Brian Warner, as well as First Lady January, First Daughter Jasmine, and Mako Warner and their families. It's important to recognize the sacrifices they make to serve our community, the late nights, the complex decisions, and the tireless efforts to balance competing interests. They play an essential role in weaving the fabric of our society, advocating for our needs, and working tirelessly to create a better future for all of us. We would like to recognize Cherokee National Treasure Dan Meek for designing the artwork for the Cherokee National Holiday theme, Weaving Our Future. A special thank you goes out to Michael Hamlin, co-coordinator, for the continued support and beautiful decorations. Megan Wooten for her relentless help and being the MC. And Paige Fowler here at the Chota Conference Center for the wonderful space and excellent hospitality. We also want to thank Ryan Krager of A Bloom Florist here in Tahlequah for the plants, and Faith Hurst with Ivy Threads in Salos, Oklahoma. We greatly appreciate all door prizes that have been donated. We would like to thank Laura Choate of Marble City for the beautiful holiday-themed ribbon skirts that Megan and I are proudly wearing. These are beautiful works of art done by local Cherokee artists. This year, our door prizes are beautiful baskets made by our own Cherokee National Treasure, Phyllis Pettit, Six Killer, and her son, Juan Ramos. We hope that you enjoy the quilt show, and may the creativity on display weave with the creativity that lives within each of us. Now I would like to turn this over to Taylor Armbrister, who just returned in June from the Remember the Removal bike ride. We are so proud of him and his accomplishments, and now we ask him to welcome you with his words in our beautiful language and say a prayer asking our Creator to watch over all of us as we share our holiday. Wado.
Wado, Deb. Hoa. Either that or least. Galilei Siwu Kohig, Iski do Lajai, Hest, Nagasti Wu, Yino Jan Nehesti, Oji Ho Desi Sun. Iski Gases Desti, Nagad, Ale, Si Danela, Do Gado Lasai, Gatiose, Nania, Dun Danilosi Doha, Aniyo, Ale, Unale Nahid, Tasahisi, Diuk the Deeth, Skew Nagadsta. Amen. Wadam. And now I'm going to turn it over to Megan for the next segment.
Thank you, Taylor. I'm Megan, and I'm going to be your host here at the Cherokee National Holiday Quilt Show. So far, we're going to start out with our prestigious awards. This award here is for the Principal Chief Choice. This one is made by Nancy Turtle. This quilt is called Turtle Time. It's owned and pieced by Nancy Turtle. It's quilted by Ina Crittenden. And as you see, this one also won the Blue Ribbon Award. So on our quilts, we don't limit it to one category or one prestigious award that they can win. They're eligible for multiple awards and multiple ribbons. So I think Nancy did a great job on this. This is in our baby quilt category. And when the chief saw this, he knew he had to make this as his selection. We're going to go on to our second prestigious award. Speaking of multiple awards, this one is actually the Themed Entry Award, and this is titled The Spider. It is owned, pieced, and quilted by Mrs. Avis Choate. Her story on the quilt is, my daughter and I designed this wall hanging from the beautiful artwork by Dan Mink. The two feathers quilted on the side represent her and her daughter and their collaboration. Her daughter said it meant so much to be able to work together to make such a beautiful piece, and she will proudly be displaying it in her office later at her home. Now, if you notice Mrs. Choate's piece, she won first place for themed entry. Mrs. Choate won the Cherokee National Holiday themed entry that Dan Mink selects himself. And then she also won First Lady of the Cherokee Nation Award. So this particular quilt here, Mr. Mink was asking about the details because as you see from our shirts and the Cherokee National Holiday poster, there are a lot of details on this quilt. When Mr. Mink designs the poster, he's designing specific things. The number of buttons around here was something that Mr. Mink specifically asked about. There are 72 buttons or 72 dots on the poster, and the 72 represents what number of Cherokee National Holiday that is this year. So Mr. Mink was especially impressed with the details, attention to detail, and the workmanship put into this quilt. So Mrs. Chota, as you can see, received 3 ribbons for that, and I believe it's much deserved. Our third prestigious award is going to be Deputy Principal Chief of the Cherokee Nation. Deputy Chief Warner selected this quilt, and it's titled Fancy Blue Ribbon. It's owned by Sandy Houston. It was pieced and quilted by Margaret Wilson. And the story she submitted with her quilt was Margaret said that she bought a skirt that had these horse heads on it. She liked it and wondered how she could use them in a quilt. This is what she came up with. She said, I think it's unique, no other like it. Now, I can tell you from Deputy Warner's time at Blue Ribbon Downs when he was younger, he put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in there. So the blue ribbon and the horse head, I think that kind of tugged at his heart. And when he saw this one's actually hand-pieced and hand-quilted. If you look, like Sandy said, this has the feed sacks on it. And then the attention to detail that each little piece that you see, each thread that somebody hand-quilted and hand-pieced each piece of that. And this right here is actually a pocket. So somebody said earlier, one of the public that came by, they said that could be a pocket for your remote. So Sandy here has her award and her ribbon. And the ribbons this year were made by the quilt coordinator, Deborah Harrell. The ribbons are handmade, and they're themed with this year's Cherokee National Holiday theme. So each prestigious person receives a ribbon that will be unique to this year's show alone. All right, and our next category here is the Mako Warner Choice Award, and this is the Youth Quilt Projects Under 12. This quilt is titled I Spy With My Little Eye. We actually are blessed enough to have the actual person who quilted and made this quilt, and her name is Lexi Limore, and we're going to go ahead and have her come up and answer a few questions about her quilt. Lexi, thank you for joining us today. So on your quilt, I read right here on the story, it says that Lexi made this quilt so during car rides or lying on the couch, we could play the game I Spy. I Spy quilts are often made for children in a hospital setting who can't get out of bed and can play this game with their caretakers. So you pieced all these pieces together and you did it on a machine. How long have you been quilting, Lexi?
For a year or two.
A year or two. Well, how do you decide what pieces of material? Do you shop that out with your mom? Is this stuff that she has left over from her projects? Because I know your mom quilts as well.
Mom, it's from leftover from her stuff.
Leftover from your mom. So on this quilt, which square is going to be your favorite?
I like the dog one.
You like the dog one. It's very cute. And who picked out the border? Did your mom help you with that?
Yeah.
I really like the border. And then as you see here, it's even got the title on it, I Spy With My Little Eye. So Lexi, you've got the Mako Warner Award. Are you working on anything right now for next year's show?
Not as I know of.
Okay. Well, how about after you win this award, now that you've got this award, how about let's make it next year's goal for you to have 2 awards?
Okay.
And in the Quilt Folk magazine, it features the Cherokee National Holiday Quilt Show. And whenever you look in it, Deborah and her mother are featured in the quilt show there in the magazine. So hopefully, if you can make us a good quilt, maybe we can get them down here and put pictures of your quilt in there. That'll certainly be a goal, won't it?
Yeah.
And the picture that you and Deborah took on the front page of the newspaper, I believe it was last year, that's what actually, in the Cherokee Phoenix, that's what actually made the Quilt Folk magazine notice this show. And so we credit you with bringing that prestigious recognition to our show. We want to thank you for that. All right. Thank you, Lexi. All right. I'm going to go on over here to First Daughter of the Cherokee Nation Award. This quilt is hand-pieced and hand-quilted. As you can see, it's got flowers, it's got birds, got butterflies in the middle, and like I mentioned earlier, the hand-pieced and hand-quilted is always a unique category. There's not very many in it. A lot of people will do possibly a hand-piece, machine quilted. Rarely do you have very many that are able to do both. And like I said, every little seam and every little stitch that you see was done by somebody by hand. This particular quilt is titled Birds, and it is owned, pieced, and quilted by Joyce Morrow. As you can see, this was first started the Cherokee Nation Jazzy's Choice, but as we mentioned earlier about multiple awards, Joyce has also reached second place in her category of hand-pieced and hand-quilted. All right, we're going to exit the stage at this time. We're going to take you right over here to our themed entry. If you'll follow me over here. We have several people in the show today, so if you're out and about today, Saturday, or Sunday, we would love for you to come by the quilt show. All right, so it looks like themed entry. This one is titled Cherokee Female Seminary. It's owned, pieced by Norma Silk. It's quilted by Emily Walls. The story on this piece is a Cherokee boarding school that offered a rigorous high school academic curriculum which prepared young Cherokees to become educators. It was dedicated by the Cherokee tribal government on May 7, 1851 in Park Hill, Oklahoma. A fire resulted in a complete loss of the school on April 10, 1887. Only the exterior brickwork and classical brick columns remain standing. Today, the historical site has 3 brick columns remaining as depicted in the quilt. The columns are a monument to how Cherokees have woven education into our culture from 1851 to the present, as evidenced by the Cherokee Nation Immersion School located in Park Hill, Oklahoma. So this is actually a landmark that you can see here in Tahlequah. So if you come up to Cherokee National Holiday, you'll be able to see this. Norma Silk is actually here in the quilt show with us right now. Norma, do you want to come on over? Sure. Come on. So Norma, this piece right here, I know it tugged at Dan Minx's heart, and he just fell in love with it. So how long have you been quilting?
Probably about 50 years.
Okay. And Norma, who taught you how to quilt, or who got you interested in it originally?
Initially, my mother and grandmother and aunts.
How many pieces did you enter in the quilt show this year?
3.
3 pieces. All right. Well, this is an outstanding piece, and hey, we hope to see you all weekend long.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. All right, this piece is titled Cherokee Nation Poster Quilt. As you can see, this is a replica of the Cherokee National Holiday themed entry. It is owned, pieced, and quilted by Janet Foreman Green. The story on this quilt is I've admired and hung Dan Mink's Cherokee Nation holiday posters in my home gallery for years. Janet said this year is no exception. He inspires her to copy his work in quilts, and she tried to create basket weaves in the patterns and the quilt. So as you can see, this pattern here is a basket weave. This one's also the basket weave. She's got the patch from Cherokee National Holiday, and she's also got the eyes on it. The eyes kind of pop and bring it alive. Janet has received 3rd place on this ribbon, and she has a little note on here that the QR code is interactive. So if you visit us here at Cherokee National Holiday, be sure and stop at Janet's Quilt and try out the QR code with your cell phone. All right, we're going to go on to the next entry. And if you're wondering, I have on gloves. We ask that each person that comes to the show wear 1 glove. That's because your oil on your hands can transfer to the quilts. So a lot of people don't intend on touching the quilt, or they say they're not going to touch the quilt, but each person will take 1 glove. That way, your gloved hand, if you need to pull the piece, if you wanted to look at the back of it. The reason I mention that, this one particular is on both sides of the quilt. So this one is titled Weaving the Stars in the themed entry. It is owned, pieced, and quilted by Michelle Newton. This wall hanging was inspired by this year's holiday poster. The stars are made of a weaving fabric, so I don't know if you can zoom in or see. The stars are sewn on the edges, but in the middle, the stars are actually woven together. So the stars are made by weaving fabric into a triaxle weave. The border is also weaved. It's a fabric basket weave, and it was all quilted together. She stated that the back sports a vinyl water spider on its web. I'm going to lift this side and just rotate it so that way you can see on the back. So as you know, this year's theme, it actually has the Cherokee water spider on it. So Michelle has the web and the water spider on the back. So Michelle did a great job. I don't know if any of you remember a couple of years ago, Michelle was the creator of the Harry Potter quilt. We had a lot of young people that got inspired on that, and a lot of people enjoyed that quilt, and that actually won one of the prestigious awards on the stage. So the next entry we have is Weaving Our Future with the Threads of Our Past. It is owned, pieced, and quilted by Laura Garrett. Her themed entry story submitted with her quilt was, this quilt was assembled using many techniques: basket weaving, fabric weaving, printing on fabric, stained glass bias tape applique, layered fusible applique, hand embroidery, quilting, and binding by machine and hand. This quilt actually received second place, the red ribbon, much deserved. We actually have Laura here. Laura, can you tell me how long it took you to produce this quilt? Did you design it? I know Dan Meek designed the poster, but the way that you decided to replicate it, did you design all this yourself?
I did. I used a lot of the patterns that were out in the media kit and kind of interpreted it myself. I switched the side of the hoops to the outside and printed the medallion on the fabric, but I pieced the spider and applique stitched it.
Now, some of it is actually painted. On this center part of the spider, can you tell me exactly what you hand painted? Because I don't know if the camera can pick up.
The medallion, so the medallion is hand painted because I couldn't get the colors right with some other techniques. The masks are hand painted, and then the circles around are painted. The weave on the medallion is hand embroidered with embroidery floss, and then the spider itself is pieced fabric and then appliqued with the seal on the center. And I think it took me about 250 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the camera can pick up, but I'm looking at the black. Like you said, all the details, it's in the circle with the spider. The black behind it has the weaving.
Yeah, these fabric strips are woven into a herringbone pattern to match the theme this year.
And then I know when you dropped it off, I was impressed even just with this corner, meaning that's individually pieced, that, you know.
Yes. So these are pieced, and then this is called a stained glass technique where it's outlined in the black bias strips. All of this bias stripping is woven with the hoops going through it.
Kind of every other.
And these are, the hoops were handmade as well. So.
Okay, you received second place. So, Laura, are you working on anything now for next year's show?
I'm going to have to start working on some things. I hadn't sewn in 20 years, though. My daughter wanted a quilt for graduation, so I made another entry for her. And when the theme came out, I just loved it. So I wanted to show myself and see if I could actually do something that creative.
Well, I think you've raised the bar, and I think next year is going to be even more impressive.
Well, thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, and our last themed entry is titled Our Flag, Our People. This one is owned, pieced, and quilted by Melissa Cryer. The story she submitted was my inspiration for the Cherokee flag. The one red line reminds us that our path is unique. The syllabary shows how important our language and culture is to the people. So you see the one red line, and then you see the syllabary. The syllabary is actually on the white part, so the syllabary is all through the flag. So this is a magnificent piece. Melissa, you must be quite proud of it. All right, so we're going to make our way through the crowd. Lots of people here today, and we opened at noon today, 8 a.m. tomorrow, and 10 a.m. on Sunday, so we would love for you to come out. All right. This quilt here is in the applique, 75% with piecework. This one is titled Camp Run Amok. As you can see, it's kind of themed for camping. We've got trees, we've got the little brown bear, we've got fishing lures down here, and the attention to detail here. The lantern even has the fire, and with the fire, they didn't just make one flame. They made a flame in 3 different colors. So, I mean, this quilt is impressive. It is owned and pieced by Janet Mortimer. It's quilted by Darlene, and the story submitted with this quilt was, I especially like the canoe since we live by the river. And again, I'm going to touch the quilt because I've got my gloves, but this is kind of a flannel material, but that's the Camp Run Amok is just with thread. So like here's the fish, there's ducks. This quilt would be a great addition to anybody's cabin or anybody that had any kind of cabin theme room. All right, now this quilt here has a ribbon hung on it. This quilt here received a ribbon for what we call World Traveler. The World Traveler Award is awarded to the quilt that has traveled the farthest to be with us here at the Cherokee National Holiday. This quilt actually traveled 1,802.6 miles to be here. So this takes a lot of effort. I know with Deborah, she works all year long to get the quilts, and as you can see here, she gets them from all over the world, all over the nation. So this quilt has traveled quite a distance to be here. Deborah wanted to give special recognition for that. The quilt is also part of the applique 75% with piecework called Woodland Critters. Excuse me. It is owned by Marcella Morton. It is pieced and quilted by Shauna Casaza. This quilt must be for a little trip. It says, I made this quilt as a gift for my mother Marcella so she could gift it to her dear friend's first grandbaby. And it's got a little squirrel, got a couple of trees, got a bear, a fox, a skunk, a rabbit, raccoon, and we were talking when we hung the quilts, we said this one's especially funny because usually people are not going to draw attention to a possum, but it's even got a cute little possum on it. So, Marcella, congratulations, and you'll be receiving your when you pick it up on Sunday. All right. The next one is a hand-pieced, hand-quilted. This one's titled Stars and Clans Forever. It is owned, pieced, and quilted by Shaylee Hare. The story she submitted said, as I get older and learn more about my heritage and arts and crafts, I wanted to make a quilt. I love green and the flowers and an antique look. And it does have sort of an antique look, like she said, with the color options that she used, the gray and green. This quilt could be for, male or female. But we have at the end of our show, we'll be going over to the miscellaneous category, and Shaylee actually has a pillow that she made that matches this quilt. So this quilt is just beautiful. Again, hand-pieced, hand-quilted. That's kind of a rarity these days. So when you look at it and realize that every stitch was done by hand, kind of makes you appreciate the quilt a little bit more. All right, this is in our baby quilt category, and it's titled Pretty Girl. It is owned, pieced, and quilted by Jean Olson. As you can see, Jean won a red ribbon, which signifies that she got second place in the baby quilt category. This one has all the pinks and blues and all the pastels, and this one looks like it was machine quilted, where you see all the different designs. Each square has a different design, and that way when it's quilted, when it comes together, it's truly a masterpiece. All right. The next quilt is applique 75% with piecework. This quilt is very impressive. It's titled The Calligrapher's Sketchbook, The Birds and the Bees. This particular quilt is owned and pieced by Catherine Bernstein. I'm going to say that's how come Catherine picked the bees. All the bees that she picked are all different fonts. Here she's got a bird, different bees. She's got flowers here with strawberries, so birds, bees, and berries. The quilting on this piece is magnificent, and they've quilted around each individual flower, each individual animal on it, each individual letter. That way when you see it, it's flawless on the front. Here with the bird, the story she submitted on this is her 7-time great-grandmother is Nancy Ward, Wild Rose of the Cherokee. I love depicting roses in my work. This quilt was inspired by my love of calligraphy and flourishing, and made with love to my teachers. So this quilt, like I said, the pink and the black, to me, the black is just bold. This one, and I like how the background, it looks like a page out of a book. So like she said, it looks like she actually has done calligraphy work on a page out of a library. So Mrs. Bernstein, we appreciate you, and it looks like you got a 3rd place ribbon, and that's much deserved. All right. Our next piece here is a fun piece. This is Let's Play a Game. This is a youth quilt project under 12. So that means the person that made this is actually under the age of 12. It is owned by Larry Stubblefield. It was pieced and quilted by Caroline Carrington. She made this quilt game board for her dad for Father's Day 2024. And as you can see, it's a checkerboard. Let me go ahead and slide that sign back in. That way, as people want to come in, we do have the signs pinned. That way you can read who it was owned, piece quilted by, and a little bit of the story behind it. So Caroline, congratulations. Got 1st place. I don't know if the ribbon will go to you or your dad, but it is much deserved. All right. The next category is also youth quilt projects under 12, Cherokee Basket Weave. It's owned and pieced by Nick Berry, quilted by Ann Olson. It received a 3rd place ribbon for its category. And the story submitted with this particular quilt is, I made a basket weave to go with the theme. I used strawberries, acorns, vine, and a pumpkin fabric to include things Cherokee's used. I wanted it to be a happy quilt. And so looking at this piece, you can see here all the colors coordinate together, but the stitching on this, to consider and think that somebody under the age of 12 did this, I'm surprised. And it looks like, I mean, I could never do anything like this, and I'm thinking if they can do this at 12, no telling what they're going to be doing when they've been quilting a little bit longer. So this got third place ribbon, so congratulations to you, Nick. This quilt is called Custer's Last Flag. It is owned, pieced, and quilted by Enid Strain. Repurposed jeans and shirt to represent the last time Custard held a flag. So this particular quilt is made from jeans that Enid had bleached out, and so that's the white. Then the red is pieced on there. This quilt is very heavy, as you can see. Deborah and her crew do a great job getting it hung. So this quilt right here is very patriotic. The blue part over here, you can see when they've quilted it, they've done what I'm going to refer to as kind of the old school quilting, where it's batted down with the X's. So this piece is magnificent, and it just makes you think of 4th of July. So this is very traditional. This quilt is good for our Labor Day weekend. All right, so quilt Seasonal Sue. It is in the mixed technique, colored, cross-stitch, appliqued, and embroidered. It is owned, pieced, and quilted by Pam Pulliam. And this story submitted said Sunbonnet Sue during the year. So as you can see, Sunbonnet Sue all here. She's got her ice skates on, springtime, even celebrating her birthday, celebrating 4th of July, down there with the pumpkin in October. So this quilt here received first place in the mixed technique category. And I'm going to say, Pat, that this is unique. I like how she was able to do the 12 squares, and it came out just right for the 12 months of the year. So Sunbonnet Sue looks fantastic. All right. The next quilt in our line here is appliqued 75% with piecework. It is titled Life in Lost City. It is owned and pieced by Denise Bell, quilted by Ann Olson. The quilt began with the first four blocks of Kim McLean's Lollipop Tree, which, recovering from an accident, I added a wild grapevine border and wildlife found on the farm. So Denise started out with just these 4 blocks. It was probably going to be a wall hanging, or like she said, just a smaller piece. I especially like the round pieces where she's taken pieces that she found to be exactly the right size. This flower, the peace signs, and then the grapevine that she talks about around the edges. If you look real close, it's got a bee. It'll have a little frog every now and then. So to me, this quilt's just colorful and fun. So Denise, great job on your quilt. Border's even colorful, so I really like that quilt. That is nice. All right. Now we've come down to Star Pop 2, another baby quilt. This one is owned, pieced, and quilted by Melissa Cryer. The story submitted with this quilt is, this is such a bright, colorful quilt for a baby. The pattern is by Emily Denise of Quilty Love, and she completed this January of 2023. This could go in a baby's room. I know parents a lot of times will have a nice little blanket or quilt that they can lay on the floor the baby can lay on. So this quilt, I'm not sure if Melissa's intention is to gift it, but this would definitely be a great addition to any family, and anybody would be lucky to have this as a baby gift. All right. Quilt 1202 is titled Garden Blooms. This is also a baby quilt. This one has much more pastel colors. This one has some heart-shaped quilting. This one's owned, pieced, and quilted by Janet Foreman Green. Janet likes to join us every year from North Carolina. When Janet comes, Janet will bring multiple quilts. Like I said, this one is a baby quilt, and she said this pretty baby quilt inspired many different quilting patterns all over the different sections. So when Janet would see this daisy here, she went ahead and used a daisy quilting pattern with it. Same thing to the hearts. When she's got a heart pattern here, Janet's attention to detail always makes her quilts pop. And like I said, we're lucky enough that Janet will usually bless us with a few extra quilts each year. And I know that Janet is very talented. And as we saw earlier, Janet had a themed entry, and this is Janet's baby quilt. Maybe we'll find a couple more by Janet. All right. The next quilt here is a little clown quilt. Now, we talked about earlier how they're reversible. So this one, as you can see, here are the little clowns. Got polka dots, very colorful. And then we'll take a little peek at the back, and it's the back. So this quilt here is actually 2-sided. And so this one, it doesn't matter which side you turn it on, you're going to get colorful clowns everywhere. And that is an amazing little baby quilt. Our next quilt is titled Threaded Tails, and it's a baby quilt, and it actually won 3rd place in the baby quilt category. It's owned by Dawn, pieced by Sheena Brings, and quilted by Sheena. The story behind this quilt is this was made with love and care for my sister to look like the sunrise of the Cherokee Mountains. Started with a photo of Water Rock Knob in North Carolina that was then printed onto material by Dawn. Then Sheena took the material and created this quilt. So when you look right here at the different patterns, what she's mentioned is whenever that it was quilted on printed on material, you can actually, if you're lucky enough to have the machine, you can actually find machines that you can take a photo and you can go ahead and print that photo onto material. And like she stated, she cut it up and made a starburst here. So this Threaded Tails is quite magnificent and earned it the 3rd place ribbon. All right, this quilt here is also a baby quilt. When people think of quilts, I think a lot of times they think of this pattern where it's block pattern and it's miscellaneous. And this one, you can see a little bit more detailed of the quilting and the pattern they did. It's got little loops, little hearts all over it. And this quilt here is for little baby, and this one is just right. It'd also be good for a lap quilt. All right, this quilt is titled Hummingbird, and it's in the applique 75% with piecework category. It is owned, pieced, and quilted by Joyce Morrow. She says she always wanted to make a quilt with a hummingbird, so she found a banner with one in it. So the hummingbird, not just one hummingbird, but she's got 2. And if you've got, actually 3. So 3 hummingbirds, and if you've got hummingbirds, you know they're going to be all around your flowers. So Joyce has done some embroidery work here, done some applique. She's got the borders, and then right here at the edge, she's got a hot pink border, and then she's even got a little bit of quilting, flowers, not only on the inside of the quilt, but also in the quilting pattern. All right, we're going to jump here across the aisle. We're going to go to quilt 406. This one is Bird in the Sky, machine pieced and hand quilted. So this person quilted the top. It is owned and pieced by Pat Taylor, and it is quilted by a quilting group called the Crazy Quilters. I know that Pat is a part of this group, so she takes this with her women. And this quilt here went ahead and threw a little bit of Patriotic in there. It's got red, white, and blue. This one, all the points come in exactly. Pat has been doing quilting for quite a while. Pat is one of those people that she's just a hidden treasure, and if you ever get to meet Miss Pat and you ask her about quilting, if you let her know that you're interested in quilting, Pat will definitely be happy to take the time to teach you. Pat's very encouraging. Most of our quilters here do want to talk quilts with people. Like I said, they're just eager to get somebody else into their hobby and to enjoy it as much as they do. So this quilt here is titled October 31st. It's owned and pieced by Connie Snelson. It is quilted by Jean Noki. And she says she made this quilt to look like a person looking out of a window of a haunted house on October 31st. So as you see, here's the window panes. You can actually see the house that would be across the street. You can see the trees here where the leaves have fallen off. And if you look at the very top, you can see the witch that's flying by, and it has a little black cat sitting on the end of her broomstick. So Connie, you did great on this quilt. This quilt looks fantastic. Again, we talk about the quilting. That's something that a lot of times you don't notice because you're looking at the colorful background. But on this particular quilt, you can see that the quilting pattern even has a small spider in it and spider webs. So the quilters will even pick themes to go in the quilting pattern with the particular quilt. All right. And our next quilt here has a 3rd place ribbon hanging on it. It is titled Night Before Christmas. We're going to go from Halloween. Next season is going to be Christmas. So Night Before Christmas, this is owned, pieced, and quilted by Genevieve Russell. She said she made a Christmas panel quilt for each of her 3 daughters, but she liked this one so much that she did it for herself. That's something that a lot of our quilters don't do. You'll be surprised to know that a lot of our quilters don't keep the quilts for themselves. They actually give them and gift them. So anybody would be lucky to have it. I hope that Genevieve's daughter's quilts were as beautiful as this one. You can see that Genevieve is machine pieced and hand quilted. So these stars, the hollies and the berry, everything in this quilt, she has actually hand quilted herself. She sewed it together on the machine, but then each of these little threads here, each of those was done by her by hand. We've got the poinsettias down here in the bottom, and we've got Santa Claus right in the middle, and it looks like he's making his list and checking it twice. All right, Genevieve, congratulations on your 3rd place ribbon. All right. This particular quilt is machine pieced and hand quilted, and it belongs to Willa Workman. It was pieced and quilted by Genevieve Russell, and they said that her sister bought this panel and later suffered a stroke. She loved this panel so much, I tried to fix it for her. I believe she really loved it. So again, with the peacock, you can see that hand quilted, Genevieve is able to not put the quilting all over it, and she'll get it to where it almost makes it pop. You'll see that it almost gives it a 3D effect because she meticulously goes around each petal and on the patterns. She goes down here and goes over the thread, and even more meticulous is all the feathers on the peacock. So this one took quite a bit of work. The color coordination with the panel itself, where she ties in the turquoise and the golds and the purples, Genevieve did great on this one. All right, our next quilt is machine pieced and hand quilted. It's titled Crown of Thorns. Now, a lot of people will look at this. This is the Crown of Thorns, where it's a circle, and as you can see, the pattern runs all throughout the quilt. This one is also owned and pieced and quilted by Genevieve Russell. She said this is the second quilt she's made of this design. She made a copy of an old quilt from a sale. It was so well done, she wanted to keep it. And that's the neat thing about a lot of our quilters. They might see a quilting pattern where they bought it, like she said, at some kind of sale, and when they see the pattern, they can go home and try to replicate it based off of that. A lot of our quilters are talented enough, they may not necessarily need a pattern. It's kind of like you hear about somebody who can play the piano just from hearing it. We have quilters who can quilt by sight. This one is titled Triple Irish Chain, and it is in the machine pieced, hand quilted category, and it received second place ribbon. It is owned, pieced, and quilted by our Genevieve Russell. She said, Grace pieced the top of this for me, and we also made 2 others in different colors. And this one here, it's got a checkered category, a checkered pattern to it. And like we talk about, all the points have to match up exactly. And if you look at it, it's a completely straight line. This one impresses me because it's got a border around it that has to be straight. And then as each piece crosses itself, that's going to have to be straight as the other one comes in and they mesh together. So Miss Russell did great on this one. Again, this one is machine pieced, but then she hand quilts each individual stitch. All right, Genevieve, thank you for your entries. This one here is machine pieced, machine quilted, and it is titled Woman. It is owned, pieced, and quilted by Barbara Price. So we've got here, we talk about the points with the quilts. This one actually has the white pattern running through. And when it's machine pieced, machine quilted, if you can see here, it looks like it's got USA, it's got bald eagle, it's got stars. It even has the outline of the continent of the United States of America. It's got the American flags on bottom, so this one's very patriotic and a very beautiful quilt. All right. Here at the Chota Conference Center, we're going to walk around here with the aisle. Aisles are plenty big enough for multiple people, so again, we encourage you to come on out and join us. Here is Tribute to the Women of the Military. It is owned, pieced, and quilted by Barbara Price. This is to all the brave women that have served in our country. So this particular quilt was submitted by Barbara, and like she said, she wanted to pay homage to the women of the military. This one, similar to the other one, has a star quilting pattern. The star quilting pattern, like I said earlier, also goes with the theme of the stars here on the quilt. The red, white, and blue, she followed that all the way through and followed it all the way to the border. On the very edge, you can see it has writing, and the writing on it is patriotic. It's talking, I thought maybe it was a song, but I don't think it's a song, but it's all patriotic titles. But it is a very nice quilt. I even like the white up at the top. It has little tiny stars, so it stayed with the star theme. Barbara's also the quilter, owner, and piecer of the next quilt, which is titled Homecoming. This quilt, you kind of have to stand back, which like I mentioned, we have extra wide aisles. A lot of times to take a quilt in, you might have to take a few steps back so that you can see it. This particular quilt actually has a father or mother who is lifting up their child. You see the American flag in the background. You see roses at the bottom. And this quilt is actually titled Homecoming. And Barbara submitted with this quilt. Her story says, welcome home to our heroes, to the families that have waited and prayed for loved ones to come home. And we do thank them, especially this Labor Day. All right. This quilt, is titled Soar High. It is machine pieced and machine quilted. It's also by Barbara Price. And her story says, we can do all things with the power of the Spirit, soar like an eagle. And as you can see, this eagle is usually what they refer to as a panel, which is one piece of material. And then on this particular panel, the eagle's wing is actually an American flag. But the eagle looks so realistic with its eyes and its claws. And then over here, she brings in, again, the star pattern. Her quilting also features a star pattern. And Barbara is actually with a group called Quilts of Valor. And a lot of times what they will do is they will make a quilt and then they will find a family and they will gift that quilt to that family. So Barbara and the group that she is with, the Quilts of Valor, they do a lot of great work and we appreciate her for all that she does. All right. This next quilt is titled Marigold, and it is machine pieced and machine quilted. It is owned and pieced by Enid Strain and is quilted by Robin Brown. And she said it was a variation on Drunkard's Path. And if you see here, it's flowers, and either way you turn this quilt, it would be the correct way. So this one was particularly easy to hang. We always appreciate that. But this quilt, it's going to be just as beautiful either way, or either side of the room that you're sitting on, or anywhere that you walk by, it's going to be great. I like how she's got the hot pink here on the flowers, and she also incorporated the hot pink into her threading. So that one's great. Thank you, Enid. All right. This quilt is adorable, called Rowan's Strawberry Patch. It is owned, pieced, and quilted by Heather McInnes. Her story she submitted with her quilt says, a sleepy baby fox naps in her favorite strawberry patch. My grandbaby Rowan inspired me to make this quilt. The majority of my fabrics were bought locally at Lawley House Antiques. And this quilt, what I found unique about it is the border. This border actually folds into itself. So she has folded each individual triangle here, and then she has serged it together. But this one doesn't just have the square border that you're used to. And then here's the little fox. It's got polka dots on its ears and its tail, and then it's even got a little butterfly that's landed on it. So it looks so peaceful. And again, the strawberry pattern, this one just makes me think of Stillwell Strawberry Festival. All right. Thank you, Heather. The woven star quilt is machine pieced and machine quilted. This is owned, pieced, and quilted by our own Michelle Newton of Tahlequah, Oklahoma. She says, this quilt is all for me. And if you know Michelle, you know that's not like her. Michelle, usually her quilts, just like this one, are much sought after by people. People will ask if they're for sale. People want her quilt. So for Michelle to say this one's all for me, it's about time, Michelle. So she said she made lots of quilts and decided it was time for one for her. She chose the fabrics because they are all the colors that you'll find in a basic crayon box. They remind me it takes all kind of people woven together to make a wonderful community. So Michelle, like she said, this looks like you'd open the box of top of the box of crayons. This quilt, she's got it, and it's got the same pattern all throughout. Michelle's is similar to the one we were talking about, where you could hang it either way. And I even notice on the sides or on the border even looks like a crayon box. So Michelle had to take each piece. You'll see that they're all the same length, and they're all different colors. So Michelle has went with the colorful theme, not only on the quilt, but also on the border. Michelle was also with our themed entry. So Michelle usually always blesses us with more than one entry, and we do appreciate that. All right, Starburst is machine pieced, machine quilted. It is owned by David Wheeler. It is pieced by our own Michelle Newton and quilted by Michelle. This quilt started as a wall hanging. That was a surprise to me because I thought it was going to be a king-size pattern, so I had to do all the math to enlarge it. I hope my nephew David enjoys it and reaches for the stars in all that he does. So, like Michelle said, she bought it thinking it was going to be king size. For her to do all the math herself, like we said, a wall hanging is going to be quite small, and then Michelle's having to figure out how much material, how far apart the squares are pieced. So we talked about earlier, whenever you could, people can play music just by ear. Well, Michelle's one of those that this wasn't actually a pattern. To say she thought of it herself, she did. She had to work it out, like she said, with the math. So Michelle is gifting this to her nephew, David. So congratulations, David. All right. This quilt here is titled Dignity. It is machine pieced and machine quilted, and this is from our Janet Foreman Green. We talked about earlier, she had a baby quilt. She has a themed entry. This is also one of her multiple entries. Now, Janet loves to pick unique quilts, and she also loves a challenge. So I think Janet had both on this. The unique, this is a statue that's actually located in North Dakota. It is titled Dignity. Janet's story that she submitted with this says, this quilt panel depicts dignity of earth and sky. This is a 50-foot tall statue in, South Dakota. She is a beautiful stainless steel creation whose star quilt on her back moves in the breeze and sparkles in the sun. So when you look at this is actually a picture of it. When you see here that Janet has quilted all around it, like Janet mentioned in her story, that is actually a quilt on Dignity's back. So it's got the star-shaped quilt. So Janet decided she wanted to take a picture of a quilt, put it on her quilt. Janet also coordinated these triangles here, and to me, these triangles here really make it pop on the quilt, and it really ties the piece together. Janet, this one you really outdid yourself. All right, and it looks like we're going to walk on down to the next quilt. This one is machine pieced and machine quilted, and this quilt is titled Southwestern Dreams. It is owned and pieced by D. Tillman, and it is quilted by Jean Olson. The fabrics are from my travels to the southwestern state. The colors put me in mind of red crayons, turquoise skies, and those who are the original habitants. So it looks like here, sticking with the southwestern theme, they've got the Aztec quilting pattern here, as you can see with the shape. And if you can zoom in on one of the black squares, it's hard to make out, but one of our volunteers that was helping us hang, when she saw this, she said, oh, I'm going to have to talk to this lady about this quilt, because in the little black squares, it's actually quilted with a little turtle. So we love anything that depicts the nature. And Dee, you did a wonderful job on this piece, and we appreciate your submission. All right, we're going to jump across the aisle. This quilt here is called Harvest. This quilt is machine pieced and machine quilted. It is owned, pieced, and quilted by Teresa Wong. She calls it improv piecing, and if you look, it's because the pieces aren't cut to be exactly square. Improv, she just has to find something that fits on it. So it reminds me of like a rock wall. On here, each individual piece is quilted with a different pattern. This one, her story says it's a free motion machine quilting, no computers, so she would have had to hold the machine and do that herself. She said this is inspired by the rich colors of the earth during harvest time, and that's why she titled it Harvest. This is Teresa's first year entering our quilt contest, and Teresa is actually with the Quilt Vault magazine, and so she heard about our story, like we said, from our picture on the Cherokee Phoenix, where Deborah and Lexi were featured on the front page. All right, this quilt here is titled Wolf Clan. It is owned and pieced by Norma Silk, quilted by Emily Wall. The story submitted with this quilt is wolves are known as protectors in the Cherokee clan of the wolf. Historically, the wolf clan was the largest. During the time of the peace chief and war chief government settings, the war chief came from this clan. So this one also has the panel. You can see the two wolves here, and then the exterior, or the border as we call it, like I said, it coincides perfectly where it coordinates with all the colors. This one is looks very much Mother Nature, and this quilt would be a wonderful piece in anyone's home. It'd be a nice wall hanging too. All right, so our next quilt is Deer Clan. This one is machine pieced and machine quilted, also owned and pieced by Norma Silk and quilted by Emily Wall. The Deer Clan, historically known as fast runners and hunters, they're also known as messengers on an earthly level, delivering messages from village to village or person to person. So when you look at it and you think Deer Clan, you're trying to think, okay, usually the title of the quilt somehow coincides with the quilt. Well, on this one, I'm just going to pull the corner up so you can see. This one does actually have deer on the back. So it would be ideal if we had quilt racks that we could rotate. This year we actually had 127 quilts, which is a record. So Deborah had to get pretty creative to find somewhere to hang all the quilts and to get them all hung. So maybe one day we'll have quilt racks that we can spin or turn around so that people can see the ones that are reversible. They can see both sides and enjoy the full masterpiece. All right, this quilt is titled Friendship, and it is machine pieced and machine quilted. It is owned, pieced, and quilted by Barbara Mooney. This is all cotton material. She selected colors, used white background with black border to pop the colors. The small pieces made for slow process, but the end result was worth it. So when I look at this, it makes me think, okay, so Barbara had to get creative because she had to find all green, and this is kind of an ombre look with this quilt. So a lot of times when kids will look at this, they're used to doing Minecraft or modern games, and they'll say, hey, this looks like Minecraft, or they'll say, this is pixelated. So this quilt does have that pixelated effect, and like she said, the black and white really does make the colors pop on it. All right. The next quilt is titled Traditional 9-Patch. This is machine pieced and machine quilted, and it is owned and pieced by Pamela Cowart. It is quilted by Danny White. She said this is made from a vintage quilt that she had. The 9-patch block has been around for a while. So Pam's paying a little bit of homage to the old ways where it talks about the 9-patch quilt. It talks about these 9 squares. That's what a lot of people think of whenever they think of a quilt. Their grandma might have made this square that had the 9 patches. So Pam's done an outstanding job on this one. We talk about how anytime you work with a quilt or material, you know that all of the squares and all of the points have to match up. That way when the quilt hangs, everything hangs right. Our judges do check that whenever they are judging the quilts. So Pam did a great job on this one. Colors are nice. It's very soft, very inviting. All right. This quilt is also by Mrs. Pamela Cowart, and it is machine pieced and machine quilted, and she's titled this one Cherokee Rose. She said the pattern is called Tea Garden. So on this one, this is a very fancy quilt. It's got lots of floral colors in it. To me, the kind of tannish pattern almost makes it look like a vintage feel, very colonial. This quilt here has amazing quilting detail in the back with the swirls. To me, it's just very soft and feminine, and with the swirls, it just really ties it all together. Pamela, you really did great on this one. All right. And our next quilt is in machine pieced and machine quilted category as well. This one is titled Reversible Quilt, and this is by Genevieve Russell. She said she calls this quilt Christmas and Spring. She likes making it because it's a lot faster than what she normally does. So being a smaller piece, as you can see, these strips are different sizes. So when she does it, she makes one square at a time and then joins the squares together. Now, this side is the spring side, and I'm going to lift this corner on the very end. I'm going to be able to peel it back just a hair and let you take a peek. This side is Christmas, and as you can see just from this corner, there's lots of Christmas material on it. It's festive red and green, so Genevieve did fantastic on this quilt. All right, the next quilt is machine pieced, machine quilted, and it is titled We the People. It is owned and pieced and quilted by Barbara Price. We had seen several patriotic quilts by her earlier with the Quilts of Valor. This one's story says, as Americans, we are the people of all race, color, and religion. She's got a border that has the stars. At the bottom, home of the brave, sweet land of liberty, America the beautiful. This quilt depicts the Statue of Liberty. She also has a couple of quotes on here from Thomas Kincaid. Each of us in our own unique way is called to let our light shine. And the second quote says, find a hill and climb it, enjoy the vista from the top. As the title here for Thomas Kincaid, this piece looks like something that you would display in your home on the wall, just like many Thomas Kincaid photos. So he has pieces of artwork, and I'm going to say that Barbara Price here has her own piece of artwork. All right. Blue Log Cabin is the title of our next quilt. It is machine pieced, but it is hand quilted. As you can see, when she quilted it and ran along the lines. That way this one stays very blocked. The pattern is reminiscent throughout it. This quilt is owned, pieced by Mildred Taylor, and it is quilted by the Crazy Quilters. She did not submit a story with this quilt, but I can tell you that she received a blue ribbon that matches her quilt perfectly. So, Mildred, it looks like you've got a ribbon that coordinates with your quilt. This ribbon here is much deserved, as this is hand quilted. No telling how many hours this took. Mildred has been doing it a while, and her, like Pat Taylor, is part of that Crazy Quilter group. All right. We've got people coming in, so we're just going to slide on by. And this is called Borgello. It is owned by Seal Christensen, and this is machine pieced, machine quilted. The Borgello was started in 1989 as a queen in Charleston, South Carolina. It was finished in New Brussels, Texas, as a king-size quilt in 2019. So you can see the pink and the red, and Borgello is actually the name of this pattern. So as you can see, if you've got to get the pattern exactly right. If you don't get the pattern exactly right, it's not going to turn out. So it's got some silk pattern here. You can also see on the quilting, it's hearts. And so this quilt reminds me of Valentine's Day. It's very lovey. It's a nice, nice quilt. All right. A Cabin on the River. This quilt is owned, pieced, and quilted by Leanne Burgess. It is machine pieced and machine quilted. The fabrics feature Oklahoma favorites. When she mentions that, if you zoom in, you can see on the white background, it says Oklahoma, and then very small are all the towns in Oklahoma. Now, I have to pay homage. I'm from Sallisaw, so it says Sallisaw right there. So, go Black Diamonds. All right, so this is owned, pieced, and quilted, like I said, by Leanne. Fabrics feature Oklahoma favorites. The white fabric has Oklahoma cities and towns listed. The quilt is an original pattern with a modern twist on a classic log cabin and creating a sampler quilt. 3 colors of thread were used on the quilt. So she uses the white thread so that she doesn't disturb the white material, and that way you can read all the towns best in that one. And then she also uses a magenta colored thread to go with the magenta pieces, and then she's got the purple thread, and as you can see, she uses in the purple pieces. Changing out the thread is going to be quite tedious, but as you can see, when she goes across the magenta, it doesn't take anything away from the color on the quilt. So it takes a lot of time, but Leanne, it certainly pays off. All right, this next little quilt is so cute, and it's called Little Farmers. It's machine pieced and machine quilted, and it was owned, pieced, and quilted by Barbara Gard. This piece was made using Quilt As You Go quilting method featuring Little Farmers. She said it was quilted on a domestic sewing machine, so she didn't have any kind of professional commercial grade machine. She just did it on her own machine for personal use. Each little farmer has their hat and shirt that matches, and each farmer also has the little handkerchief that's in his back pocket. So this little quilt, when we saw it said Little Farmers, it's really, really cute. And then even the border is something of a pattern that when I think of Pioneer Woman or Farm, it's got the blue and white and yellow pattern that you see, or makes you think of Grandma's apron. So Little Farmers is a great little quilt. All right. And this next quilt is machine pieced and machine quilted, called Boho Dreams. It is owned and pieced by Laura Garrett. It's quilted by Beverly Matthews. Machine pieced, machine quilted. She says she made this quilt for her daughter for her high school graduation in May of this year. She picked out the muted colors and the relaxing, simple design. If you'll remember, Laura is the one that we spoke to at the themed entry. Laura was the one that said she hadn't sewed in a long time, and then she made her daughter a quilt for her graduation. This is a quilt that she started out on. So boho is very in right now. All the colors are muted, so her daughter did a great job picking out the colors on this, and this quilt's for her daughter for graduation, so congratulations on your recent graduation. All right. This next quilt is Starburst. It is machine pieced and machine quilted. It is owned, pieced, and quilted. By Shelley Turtle, pieced by Nancy Turtle, and quilted by Ina Crittenden. So this piece here, it's got the purples and the browns, so it's very earth tone. The turquoise really ties in with the browns and makes it pop. And like we said earlier, with all of the diamond shapes on it, all the points and everything has to match up exactly. Pieced by Nancy Turtle, who actually was the winner of the Chief's Choice Award. So Nancy does definitely know what she's doing. All right. This piece is titled Debbie Star, and it is machine pieced and machine quilted. It is owned by Debbie Hummingbird, pieced by Tony Workman, and quilted by Nancy Ellis. Lone Star quilt custom made with color inspiration from an Oklahoma sunset. So the quilt just bursts out, does the ombre. As you can see, it does reminisce to a sunset, and then the background is more like a night sky where it's got blue and got gold, looks like little tiny stars everywhere. Even has a pop of color that runs over here on the side. Any quilt with a star, I really enjoy the star quilts. I know they're a lot of work, but once you see the finished product, you really appreciate all that hard work that's put into it. All right, let's go on to our next quilt, which is machine pieced, machine quilted, titled Scrappy Crossroads. This is owned and pieced by Miss Mildred Taylor, and it is quilted by Donna Belt. So the scrappy crossroads, if you see where this is splattered, reminds you of a dirt road somewhere. And Mrs. Taylor, like we said, she has a couple of hand quilted ones here, and her and the crazy quilters usually do the quilting on it. This one was quilted by Donna Belt. So this is the square that most people are reminiscent about, and to coincide the two of them, I think it's really a beautiful pattern and it really pulls off well. All right, thank you for your entry, Mildred. All right, this one is also by Mildred Taylor, and she gifted this to Tamara Hibbard. So Tamara is the owner of the quilt, and this quilt is machine pieced and machine quilted, and it is titled Purple Log Cabin. So this one has all different shades of purple. It's got the white, it's got the flowers for the quilting. Like we said, that quilting was done by Donna Belt, and this one is fantastic. Tamara is actually the mayor for Marble City, and that's where Miss Taylor is from. So I'm glad that she quilted that, and I'm sure Tamara enjoys it. All right. Next quilt I can see has a second place ribbon hanging from it, and it is titled X's and O's. Machine pieced, machine quilted. It is owned, pieced, and quilted by Jean Olson. She says she wanted to make this quilt so she could custom quilt it. It was way too much fun quilting. Well, when she talks about with the machine quilted, as you can see, like we talked about earlier, she went across each X so that way it's not pinned down. It does pop on there. So the X's, just like tic-tac-toe, you see all the X's, and then this right here is the O's. She's got a border that also matches each one, and the border is made of several different small panels, so it would have took a long time to make this quilt, but it paid off with your second place ribbon. Congratulations, Jean. All right, we're going to hop here across the aisle, and we're going to go to floor tiles. This one is owned by Melissa Cryer, and it's pieced and quilted by her as well. It is machine pieced and machine quilted. She said this was an exercise in stretching her creative choices. She never picked fabric this busy. She completed it in November of 2022. She said the pattern is floored quilted by Christian Palk. So this one, when she says she doesn't pick anything this busy, it is a busy pattern, but I think that she pulled it off well. As you can see on here, it's two squares, and when she turns it a little, it kind of turns it into somewhat of a star pattern, which with all the pieces and all the corners, she matched it up exactly. And I think this would be a great addition to anyone. I know there's lots of teenagers and young people, they love the busy patterns, they love the floral patterns, so I think you could find somebody to take it off your hands. All right, this quilt here is machine pieced and machine quilted. It's owned by Sandra Peak, and it is pieced by Sylvia Dempsey and also quilted by Sylvia. The quilt was commissioned for a Cherokee woman. The fabric cotton with paisley prints, and as you see here, it's got the stars inside and out. It's got the stars here. If you fold it a certain way, these two stars on the outside that are cut in half actually meet in the middle. So this one's a blue and gray quilt with the paisley pattern here in the grays and the blue pattern. I think it goes together splendidly. Excuse me. This quilt is the double wedding ring. A lot of people, you hear them talk about that. That was definitely a grandma pattern. People probably have seen a double wedding ring. Not many people have made it. Some people may have been, like I said, fortunate enough for somebody to have made them one. But as you can see, the ring is here, and then they all coincide. So the double wedding ring, a lot of times people were gifted this for a wedding gift. It is owned and pieced by Pat Pulliam, quilted by Ann Olson. She said it was a favorite pattern during the 1930s. No money to buy material, so friends and family would contribute small pieces, and it was usually a wedding gift. So whenever it's got the small little blocks, like she said, people would donate clothing that they had outgrown, maybe somebody's shirt that had a hole in it, and then they would just piece it together, and the women of the community would usually get together, and all the time and the material was considered a gift to the new wedded couple. All right. Our next quilt here is machine pieced and machine quilted, and it's titled And Life Goes On. The owner and quilted by Pat Pulliam, and it was pieced by her as well. She says, a tree is like a family with different branches and branches losing leaves, but the tree grows and sprouts new leaves. So this one was like we talked about earlier. It's kind of pixelated. You can see that she's got the leaves of the tree falling off into the ground. She's even got here, it's an actual tree trunk So the material is probably an actual picture of a tree trunk, so it looks very realistic. And like she says, tree is like a family with different branches. The branches go everywhere. With the Cherokee National Holiday, we consider this kind of our family reunion. So we hope that you'll come out this weekend and join us. Chief and Deputy are basically putting on a family reunion, and they've saved a spot for you. All right, so this quilt here is titled Starfire. It is machine pieced, machine quilted. It is owned and pieced by Virginia Searless and is quilted by Ina Joan Crittenden. She said it is dedicated to her 5 great-grandchildren as we look forward to their future. Now this quilt here, I do have to say the first daughter, Jazzy, was kind of torn. She did come back to visit this quilt a couple of times. So I want you to know, Virginia, that your quilt was in a close second for Jazzy as first daughter's pick. This quilt is, like we said, ombre. When it's called Starfire, I can see the star and the fire, so it is very great titled. It gave us a good idea of what to look forward to from your entry. All right. This next quilt is titled Natalie's Flower Garden. It is machine pieced and machine quilted, and it is owned and pieced by Karen College, quilted by Leanne Burgess. She made this quilt for her daughter Natalie. She let her pick the fabric and pattern. The quilt is just like her, beautiful, bright, cheerful, and has a big personality. Sewn with lots of love, Mom. That is so sweet. And as you can see, she also earned herself a 3rd place ribbon. So the quilting on here, I don't know if you can zoom in and see, it almost has a medallion where all of the 4 corners meet. And like we said, the detail, I keep encouraging you to come out because the detail on these quilts, you won't be able to see through a camera lens. So we want you to come out and view it in person. All right. So our next quilt is going to be Tilt-A-Whirl, and it is machine pieced and machine quilted. It is owned and pieced by Peggy Gann. It is quilted by Leanne Burgess, and it is a Tilt-A-Whirl pattern. So as you can see in here, it's got the blue and the turquoise and the oranges. This was just a very fun color. It has good pop. To me, it's a good summer quilt. And if you can zoom in, we've got the quilt with the 4 squares, and then even on the side, it's got the quilting with just the 2 squares. So this is, it's got a pretty busy pattern on the edge, and then it's got almost like a rainbow border on it. This is a fantastic quilt, Peggy. All right. This next quilt is titled Exploding Heart. It's one that you kind of have to stand back a little bit to look at it. This is owned and pieced by Patsy Gillespie, and it's quilted by Front Porch Fabrics. It is machine pieced and machine quilted. They said it was a great pattern for using scraps. You only have to have a small piece of material to be able to make that little triangle, and then it all comes together. It's got the heart shape in the middle, then it's got a navy blue border around it, and then as you can see, the scraps around the navy blue pattern of the heart look to be exploding like they're popping. So you can see the pattern, and you can see that the title is very well suited for this quilt with the exploding heart. This is something that I think a young teenage girl would like on her room or on her bed. Very good job. All right. This next quilt is machine pieced and machine quilted. It is titled Grace's Star. This is also by Teresa Wong, which this is her first year to enter a quilt. She entered this one and the Harvest quilt that we started out with on the other aisle. So this one is, the story is Grace's Star is based on a quilt made by Grace in 1968. She was a Teton Western Sioux and lived on the Standing Rock Reservation. Her quilt is part of the Smithsonian National Museum of American Indian. As you can see, this quilt did earn a first place blue ribbon for machine pieced and machine quilted. We have judges that are certified judges, and I can tell you from us tallying the votes last night, this was one of the few quilts that did receive a perfect score. As you can see all the quilting through it, I know that the judges commented that the points, every single point they looked at, and they said every single point lines up perfectly, for me to quote them. I know when the chief came and judged, they mentioned that when you stand back from this quilt, it's almost an optical illusion because this quilt actually looks like it's bursting. It actually looks like it's moving. So like I said, come out and view this for yourself. We're going to go back to Deborah and
all right. Tell me when. Yeah, okay. Good afternoon and welcome to the Unity Quilts of Valor. I am a representative for the Quilts of Valor. Is it on? Okay. I am a representative. We are a group of quilters from across this nation, and our only project is to make and award quilts to our veterans and active service members. Today I'm going to award two, one to my best friend, which we haven't seen in about 8 years, and one to my daughter-in-law, who we haven't seen in about 5 years. So we all met here at the Cherokee Quilt Show in order to be able to do this, and what an honor. To be allowed to do this with the Cherokee Nation. We know that they go back a long ways, and I'm from the Tennessee area, so there's a lot of Cherokees over there. I don't happen to be one, but only in heart. The Quilt of Valor Foundation is a group of volunteers, quilters across America, founded in 2003 by Catherine Rogers, a Blue Star mom. Our mission is to honor our service members and veterans that have been touched by war for comfort and healing. As of today, the nationwide Quilts of Valor have awarded 392,057 quilts. No, wait just a minute. Okay. Our first quilt was awarded to a young man who lost his legs in Afghanistan, and that was back in 2003, or Iraq, I guess it was. And the chaplain at the Walter Reed Hospital had the honor of awarding this young man his Quilt of Valor. Our quilts bring a three-part message from our hearts. First, we honor you for your service. We honor you for leaving all that you hold dear and stand in harm's way in a time of crisis, protecting us from the effects of war. Next, our quilters know that freedom is not free. The cost of our freedom is the dedication of lives of men and women like you. And this quilt is meant to say thank you for your service to our nation. Finally, this quilt is meant to offer comfort to you and to remind you that you are forever in our thoughts and in our hearts, and you are appreciated. For those of us who have never seen combat or been in a war zone, such an experience is beyond our capability to comprehend. But we believe these Quilts of Valor have the ability to offer comfort as well as warmth. We hope when you experience dark times or need of a grateful hug, you will wrap your quilt around yourself so that we can provide comfort in every seam that we've sewed. On the behalf of the Quilt of Valor, we're going to award Butch Wayne. His real name is Howard Morgan, and he was in Vietnam. He is a Vietnam veteran, and we have a certificate. If you ever are in doubt of whether the quilt you got is a Quilt of Valor, there'll always be a label on the back of it right there, and a certificate. If you don't have those two things, it's not a Quilt of Valor. It's probably a patriotic quilt. Quilts of Valor Foundation. E4, Howard Butch Wayne Morgan. E4, United States Army. From 1969 to 1970. The Quilts of Valor Foundation wishes to recognize you for your service to our nation. We consider our privilege to do so, though we may never know the extent of your sacrifice to protect and defend the United States. We award you this Quilt of Valor as an expression of gratitude from a grateful nation. There's your certificate. Butch Wayne, this is your Quilt of Valor. Hold it way up, boys.
That's beautiful. You've done a good job.
Thank you. If you stand right over next to it, right in front of the little Dell, where we can get a picture.
Little Dale. It's okay.
Yeah, right there. Yeah, right there. And if you see, it's got Butch Wayne's pictures on it from the Vietnam, and I do these pictures. They're burnt into the fabric. They'll never fade out. They'll never wash out. They're permanent as part of this quilt. Also for Butch Wayne and some others that might be here, we have the lapel pins for the Vietnam War 50-year commemorative pins. If you have never received your commemorative pin and you are a veteran from the Vietnam era, whether you was in Vietnam or on the support team, we want to pin you with your quilt of your certificate and stuff. And We will pin him next, okay? If you'll wrap him with that, stand in front of it, Butch Wayne. We don't tell who has been touched by war. It takes everybody that's in the military, whether you're cooking, cleaning, or whatever you're doing, to make the system work. So with that being said, Butch Wayne, honey, thank you for your service to our country.
All right. Woo. Dry your eyes. This quilt is titled Double Bear Paw. It is owned, pieced, and quilted by our own Bonnie Richmond. It is machine pieced, machine quilted. It is a variation of the original pattern that dates back to 1823, where it was found in Ohio. It's believed that the original pattern came from the sawtooth block. Some also believe that it was used to transmit the message of where to travel on the Underground Railroad. However, there is currently no valid proof of that occurrence. In her story, she said she really liked the appearance of the double bear paw and wanted to make one. She said she can now mark that off of her bucket list. All right. We're going to come over back here to the Quilts of Valor.
Oh, you're right. Ready? Okay, this is my daughter-in-law. She was in the Navy for 20 years. She was married to my son, who was also in the... I still am, not was. Still am married to him, and we love her to death. Better than the last 5 he had. Quilts of Valor Foundation, E5, Jennifer Price, United States Navy, 1993 to 2013. The Quilts of Valor Foundation wishes to recognize you for your service to our nation. We consider it our privilege to do so, though we may never know the extent of your sacrifices to protect and defend the United States of America. We award you your Quilt of Valor from a grateful nation. And she did give up a lot. She had to, she had 2 sons that she had to let her father raise while she was in the military. So she did give a lot for our country. So Jennifer, this is your Quilt of Valor. I got you some. Thank you, Jennifer. And they'll take you over there. Now, is there any other Vietnam veterans in here that have never received their Vietnam War commemorative pin? Okay, Janice has it. Anybody else? I have several with me, so I'll gladly pin you. Vietnam veterans. You did not have to be in Vietnam. This is part of the government program because the Vietnam veterans was treated so badly, even if they wasn't in Vietnam. If they had that uniform on, they were designated as baby killers and whatever else, you know. So we want to recognize all the Vietnam veterans, support groups and whatever. So right now we're going to award Janice Freeman Green and Butch Wayne. Now, if this will go out, March the 29th has been declared Vietnam Veteran Day for the rest of forever. And so the 29th of this March 25, 2025, this will no longer be in effect. So I do want to pin as many as I can while we've got them and to recognize our Vietnam veterans and service people.
Thank you. So,
and with that being...
Machine pieced, machine quilted is our next quilt, and it's titled Summer Starburst. It is owned and pieced by Joanne Martin. Quilted by Bonnie Richmond. She says she saw a photo of this quilt in a Love of Quilting magazine. Her friend and her decided they would make it. It was the first time squaring up, and there are so many of the little squares. She said, but she did it. She's never sewn or quilted and began about 7 years ago at the age of 70, and she's 77 and going strong. So that just goes to show you it's never too late for a hobby to start with the quilting. The next quilt we're going to go to is going to be Bear Paw, and it is machine quilted. It is owned and pieced by Debbie Dunn and quilted by Bonnie Richmond. The Bear Paw is a majestic symbol of strength and courage. And here, as you can see, the Bear Paw, it's in different colors, so that way you can see each individual bear paw on this quilt. I think Debbie did a great job. This quilt is titled Spring Garden Kaleidoscope. It is machine pieced and machine quilted. It is owned and pieced by Brenda Freeman and quilted by Mary Penner. She said this quilt was fun to piece and a joy to look at, and I do have to agree with that. I like the black and white checking on the background. It's almost a polka dot. Good job, Brenda. All right. Our next quilt is a machine pieced and machine quilted, and it's titled Christmas Quilt. As you can see, it's got Santa Claus, it's got the manger scene, it's got snowflakes, it's got candles, it's got even got Rudolph the reindeer over there on the end. This is owned, pieced, and quilted by Ina Crittenden, and this is certainly makes you get ready for the winter Christmas time. All right, our next quilt we're coming to is machine pieced and machine quilted, titled Vintage Windmill. It is owned by Carolyn Carrington. It is pieced by Sarah Stubblefield and is quilted by Happy Tales Quilting. She said she enjoyed making this quilt for her daughter's 8th birthday, so happy birthday. All right, this quilt is titled Layer Cake Lollies. It is machine pieced and machine quilted, owned and pieced by Sarah Stubblefield and quilted by Happy Tales Quilting. So this piece here, it just kind of has all different colors in it. It's similar kind of to what we talked about with the boho colors. Very muted colors, but also still a very beautiful quilt. All right. This next quilt is called the Plus Side. If you look, it does have plus signs on it. The plus signs are white and whatever color the material is, but they're kind of opposite, kind of like the yin yang. It is owned, pieced, and quilted by Melissa Cryer. She said she just loves the bright, solid colors against the low volume whites and grays. The pattern is called the Plus Side, and she completed it May of 2022. These quilts here are like we talked about. This one here is pieced with several different squares, and this one here I believe is called Grandpa's Shirts. This particular quilter mentioned that her father had shirts that looked like this whenever he was working wearing a uniform, and she said it just reminded her of his shirts. This quilt here is called Buffalo, and as you can see, you see this print on a lot of things where it's got the buffalo, but the buffalo actually has a landscape pattern on it. This is a very beautiful quilt. The next quilt is by the same artist, and this one is called Buffalo Tales. This quilt actually depicts a panel where the chief is talking to the young children of the tribe, giving them advice, giving them knowledge, much like our chief and deputy do today. This next quilt is called Crimson Crown. It is machine pieced and machine quilted. It is owned by Teresa Iman. It is quilted by Bonnie Richmond. It is Block of the Month, Class Project 2023-2024. They said, what a great class. They learned much working on the different blocks. And what I will make with my hands, she said she will give with her heart. So that's a great story. All right. And this quilt here is called Aerial View by Enid Strain. She owned and pieced it, and it's quilted by Ann Olson. Now, when you look at it and we hung it, we thought aerial view. We kept looking and looking. She mentioned that it reminds her of New York City. And if I can just peel this back to give you a little peek, this is where she's talking about the aerial view. If you can see these little blocks down here, it looks similar to an aerial view of New York City when you're looking at the downtown, all the tall buildings and skyscrapers. Enid did a great job on that. Like we said, kind of a little hidden feature that you can't see on TV. You'll have to come see us in person. The next quilt is titled Country Romance, and it is mixed technique. It is owned, pieced, and quilted by Bonnie Richmond. She said she found this free pattern on the internet with all my heart. She said, I had fabric very similar in my stash and decided to make it. However, I knew there was a border treatment that I had wanted to try, and this little quilt would be perfect to try on. She said it appliques sawtooth border with eyelet lace underneath and ribbon lace on top to give it a soft, romantic look. She said, I think it worked out very well. How about you? I do have to agree, Bonnie, with the lace and the border. I think that worked out perfectly. It was something that I hadn't seen before, but I really enjoyed it. All right, this next quilt I can see has a third place ribbon hanging on it. It's Prairie Sky. excuse me, also the mixed technique category. It is owned and pieced by Sarah Stubblefield, and it is quilted by Happy Tales Quilting. She said she enjoyed making this quilt top with three different techniques. I know I've heard some of our viewers that come in, they stated that it actually looks like a rug, and it does. It looks like a large rug hanging here. I like the Aztec print, and it's very beautiful colors. The next quilt is called Natalie Flowers, and it's actually a mixed technique. It is owned by Natalie Spradley, and it is pieced by Melissa Cryer and quilted by Melissa. She said she made this as a high school graduation present for her son's girlfriend, and she said the pattern is called Field of Flowers. So congratulations on your graduation. This next quilt here actually has a ribbon hanging from it, and this quilt here received coordinator's choice. So our coordinator here, Deborah Harrell, gets to pick her favorite quilt, and this quilt was her favorite. It is owned, pieced, and quilted by Leanne Burgess. The story is this is an original pattern. It features a road map print of the state of Oklahoma. So if you can zoom in on this white part, the quilting kind of makes it difficult to see, but it is actually a road map. She said the state flowers are here, and scissor-tail fly catchers make up the applique border with yo-yo embellishments. We have a scissor-tail fly catcher all the way at the top, and then we have a scissor-tail fly catcher right down here in the corner. The other fabrics hint to the life of Oklahoma as well. What she's speaking about is the green and the blue pattern actually has Oklahoma written on the fabric all through it. And then, of course, we've got the wheat fields. So this one is actually called Rolling Spools. Very nice quilt and much deserving of the coordinator's choice. When Deborah saw that, she pointed to it, and Deborah said, "That's a beautiful quilt." This next quilt is titled Just Us Chicks. It's mixed technique, and it is owned and pieced by Nancy Turtle, quilted by Ina Crittenden. So here we've got, when she says Just Us Chicks, she's even named the chicks. She's got Dearest Bonnie, she's got Intellectual Ina, Ravishing Rosina, she's got Vivalicious Vivian, and she's got Marvelous Marilyn. I might have liked it better if she put Megan, so how about, Nancy, we get that name changed? Can you do that for me? All right, our next quilt is titled Oklahoma, and the title is all the way across the top. It depicts a teepee. There's a couple of teepees and a buffalo. It even has a pair of cowboy boots on it. So again, this is like our rolling spools. This pays homage to the state of Oklahoma. State flag is here. Talks about the land runs, got the wild horses. It is owned and pieced by Jackie Webb and quilted by Mary Piner. It received a second place ribbon in the mixed technique, and it even has a little bit of 3D embellishment here. It has a beaded piece on the headdress with actual feathers that stick out. Great job, Jackie. All right, this next quilt is titled Buttons in Bloom, and it's also mixed technique. The owner, piecer, and quilter is Linda Cole. She said she saved the pattern from an old quilting magazine. She normally doesn't do applique, but decided to mix up her technique. She loved the colors in the floral border squares. And she's talking about this piece right here, and I think that she matched the flowers with it perfectly. All right, and our next quilt is called Endearing Love, and it's also mixed technique, and is owned and pieced by Dee Tillman, quilted by Jean Olson, and she said it's representing things that give flight to her imagination. So she's got the birds here, she's got the floral, and this is just a very pretty quilt. I'm actually going to come straight across here. We've got one quilt that like I said, Deborah had to get creative with where she was hanging quilts. This quilt is titled Bluebird, so it's not necessarily on an aisle. We've got it stuck here. We've got quilts in every corner we can find. And this one's titled Bluebird. It is owned and pieced by Joyce Morrow, quilted by Joyce as well. She said she saw a banner with the blue bird on it, so she said she made a quilt with a blue bird. And there's her bird, and there's the flowers, and it's sitting on a branch, and just looks like you're looking out the window at it. All right. And our next quilt category is probably one of my favorite, and it is the t-shirt quilts. The t-shirt quilt category, this one's called Bass Pro for the Win. As you can see, it's made of Bass Pro shirts. It is owned and pieced and quilted by Nancy Turtle. I'm proud to say that Nancy's Bass Pro t-shirt quilt has received a second place ribbon. This next quilt is Muldrow Memories, and it is also a t-shirt quilt. It is owned by Harley Sharp, and as you can see on here, it says Harley right there. It was pieced and quilted by Linda Cole. Linda says the quilt was made from her great niece using her t-shirt from pre-K all the way to high school cheer. So I do want to show you on this quilt before we go. This quilt is actually, not only is it t-shirt, it's double-sided t-shirt quilt. So it has t-shirts on front and back. That's a lot of t-shirts, but like she said, pre-K to senior year. Congratulations. All right, this is the Red Clay State Park. We talked about my good friend Janet Foreman Green. She actually owns, pieced, and quilted this quilt. This quilt is made from Red Clay State Park t-shirts sold in their gift shop. This quilt actually received a first place ribbon, and reminiscent of my friend Janet, she has donated more quilts than she has herself. Similar like we talked about Michelle Newton, they never keep a quilt for themselves. When Janet finds out somebody adores one of her quilts, she just gifts it to them. This quilt is actually going to be gifted to the Red Clay State Park, and it's going to hang in their welcome center at Red Clay, and she's going to leave it there. So Red Clay is lucky to have it. We have had people ask if it's for sale. We had to tell them, unfortunately, it's not for sale. They can't believe it's actually been given away. Janet, you're just sweet like that. This next quilt is also quilted by Janet Foreman Green, pieced and owned by her as well. This quilt is called Jackpot Judo Birthday Quilt. In true Janet fashion, the quilt was made in Las Vegas with Las Vegas t-shirts and presented to Eric for his 44th birthday at his Jackpot Judo Birthday Bash in Vegas just recently on August 24th. So like I said, my good friend Janet, she's always gifting things to people. She got all of his quilts, even made this quilt for his birthday theme. So Janet, I can't wait to see what your next surprise is going to be. The quilt across the aisle from me is actually machine pieced and hand quilted. It's titled My Christmas Quilt. It is owned, pieced, and quilted by Pat Taylor. I think this quilt pretty much speaks for itself. You see all the Christmas patterns in it, and this quilt is quite magnificent. The next quilt we're coming to is hand-pieced and machine quilted, and it's called For Mama. It is owned and pieced by Diane Grinstaff, and it's quilted by Jean Olson. They call it a disappearing four-patch, and it's in memory of her mom, Dorothy Page. She and both my grandmothers provided a lifetime of quilts and sewing memories. So the quilt pays honor to her grandmother and to her mother, and as you can see, it placed a first-place ribbon. Congratulations. All right, this next quilt is from Janet Foreman Green, owned, pieced, and quilted by her, and it is titled The Howard Sisters Garden. This little story really touched my heart. She said her mother-in-law and her sister hand-embroidered and pieced this quilt in 2017 and 2019. She offered to machine quilt it for them, but got too busy with her day job. So she says, my cubby and Ruthie passed away in 2019 and 22. The sisters never bugged her about their quilt. She finally finished it in June of 2024, so that's fantastic. Janet, watch those stories. They make me tear up. Our next quilt is hand-pieced and machine quilted, and it's titled 1950s Adair County Women. Some of you may have seen a quilt like this. Our church actually has a quilt like this where people would write their names. It was kind of their quilting group, and they would make a quilt that they basically kind of kept almost like a yearbook. And so it has the quilters' names on it. And like I said, this is 1950s County Women. They said it is owned by Verna Duncan, pieced by Adair County Women, and quilted by Seal Christensen. These quilt blocks were found in 2021, and they put them together in 2023, earned them a third-place ribbon in that category. I'm going to swing around here, if you'll come this way with me. Like I said, we have stuck them everywhere. All right, we're back here in the corner, and this one's titled Flower Box. It is hand-pieced and hand-quilted. The owner is Sandy Houston. She said she found the flower squares, thought they would make a pretty quilt, and it earned her a third-place ribbon in her category. This next quilt, this beautiful red quilt, is titled Flower Garden. It is also by Sandy Houston. She said she never made this pattern, but she said it's fairly simple to her, and she said it makes a beautiful quilt. All right, this next one is Trip Around the World. It has received a first-place ribbon in hand-pieced and hand-quilted. Sandy Houston. Margaret said she enjoys quilting this pattern. She enjoys seeing the outcome of the quilt after quilting it. And like we said, every stitch is hand-done, so this one to be hand-quilted is magnificent. This quilt is titled At the Cross. It is owned, pieced, and quilted by Sherry Waters, and she said it's a labor of love and gratitude, and I think we can all say the same for Jesus. All right, this back corner, this is what we would like to refer to as our cubicle. We're giving our staff directions and volunteers. We've had several people come in. This is a first place ribbon, and it's first place in miscellaneous items. This is a backpack quilted by Happy Tales Quilting, pieced by Sarah Stubblefield, and owned by Caroline Carrington. The backpack was designed by me for my daughter. This is her the third year I've designed and perfected the backpack design. Fabrics are Tula Pink, picked out with her daughter. So if you look at this backpack, which we've got the label on it and the ribbon, I know the judges commented, this is actually an elastic pocket. It has straps on the back. We've had people come and ask us if it was a Vera Bradley, so that's how good of a job she did. This is also a first place entry, and this is in Youth Quilt Projects 13 to 17. It's a crossbody quilted bag, owned, pieced, and quilted by Amelia Schober. She said this quilted crossbody purse is composed of various cotton scrap fabrics on the outside, a liner with a button to fasten, and a strap. So she received first place ribbon for that. This one is a wall hanging. It is owned, pieced, and quilted by Melissa Cryer. She said she made a cute little welcome sign for her cubicle at work. And I was going to show you the back because she has actually sewn little magnets on it. When she says she has it for work, she can magnet it to her door. So Melissa, if you're looking for somebody to give that to her when you're ready to change it out, you can call me. All right, this is actually a rug. And the rug is a sewing-themed jelly roll rug. And when we say sewing-themed, you can see hands on here that sew. It's got scissors. This was actually owned, pieced, and quilted by Nikki Limore. She said the rug is made from 2.5-inch strips of fabric layered with batting, sewn into a tube, and then zigzag stitched together. She says rugs are fun and easy to make and wash, and she said they make great custom gifts. She's actually going to keep this one for her sewing room. And Nikki Limore is actually the mother of Lexi Limore that actually won the Mako Warner Award. So, Nikki, great job. All right. Here we have a miscellaneous item titled Playtime. It is owned, pieced, and quilted by Bonnie Richmond. She says she was in between quilt projects and just wanted to play. She chose scrap pieces of fabric from her work table, and this is what she came up with. And I think it's a beautiful piece. It would be great for a wall hanging. All right, Bonnie. Great job. I'm going to spin this piece around. And this is miscellaneous items, and it's titled Prairie Flowers. As you can see, it is owned, pieced, and quilted by Pat Pulliam. She says always look for the beautiful flowers in the weeds. Great recommendation. Now the flowers are sideways. We pin it back a little bit to keep everything off of the floor, and this received third place ribbon in miscellaneous. The quilt that we had earlier that belonged to Shaylee Dawn Hare, this is the pillow that we said goes with it. It's actually two-sided. The pillow goes with the quilt that I made. She said she loves the star and the clan that it represents. Here is a miscellaneous item. It is also a pillow that was owned, pieced, and quilted by Nancy Turtle, and it received a second place ribbon in the miscellaneous category. All right. Here in the wall hanging category, we have spring canning, also done by Nancy Turtle, owned and pieced by her, quilted by Ina Crittenden. So as you see, little mason jars, and Nancy has all of the vegetables and fruits that you're used to seeing in Grandma's pantry, and it received a third place ribbon. Great job, Nancy. This wall hanging was also admired by the first daughter. It is a wall hanging titled Classic Rock, and it is owned, pieced, and quilted by Leanne Burgess. Leanne received a first place ribbon in her category for that. She said this is a collage quilt technique. It's an original design featuring music elements. She said it's embellished with buttons, guitar picks, and piped accents. So Deborah and I, when we were hanging it, were looking for the guitar picks, and there they are right there on the side. This next wall hanging is titled Christmas Trees with Horses. It is owned, pieced by Thresha Iman, and quilted by Bonnie Richmond. They said it was a class project done with panels, which is where the horses are. They decided to make theirs two-sided with complementary fabric for the back side, exploring a different technique. As you can see, it got second place in its category. And here's a quick view of the back. The back is just as beautiful as the front. It depicts small horses with a big tree. And then you look on this side, and it's got big horses with small trees, so that worked out perfect. This next wall hanging here is Polka Dotted Waves, and it is owned, pieced, and quilted by Melissa Cryer. The blocks were actually left over from another project. She said she loves polka dot fabric so much that she could not let them go to waste. I have to agree. It's just cute. It's like we said, it's a great way to talk about recycling and repurposing. We're going to walk on over here to our ribbon skirt category. We have a ribbon skirt here that is owned, pieced, and quilted by Sylvia Dempsey, and it received a first place ribbon for its category. Beautiful purple colors, beautiful quilting. Now we have a ribbon skirt titled Wilma P. Mankiller. As you can see, it has a picture of the Wilma P. Mankiller quarter at the bottom, has the Cherokee embellishment, and this is owned, pieced, and quilted by Lisa Benge. Another one of Lisa's creations is the MMIW, Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women. It is owned, pieced, and quilted by Lisa Benge. She has the embellishment here, and has a ribbon to match it. Second place ribbon. Congratulations, Lisa. All right. And third place in the ribbon skirt is also Lisa Binge, and this is her skirt titled Oaks Warriors. And as you can see, the embroidery there, and she got the third place ribbon. We have Strawberry by Karen College. It is on pieced and quilted by her. It's titled Strawberry. Has a little strawberries there for the Strawberry Festival. And here is Dragonflies. This ribbon skirt is also on pieced and quilted by Karen College. And as you can see, properly titled with the dragonflies all across the front. And the last ribbon skirt is Cherokee, on pieced and quilted by Karen College. Has this nice ribbon in the middle. All of it coordinates together, and those ribbon skirts are beautiful. We love getting those. This next quilt is titled My First Quilt. It is owned and pieced by Josh Berry, quilted by Ann Olson. He said this is his first quilt. His favorite color is blue. Favorite animal is shark. Favorite fruit is strawberries and bananas. So first quilt and got a second place ribbon. I'd say that's pretty impressive. All right, next quilt is titled Shoe Fly Christmas Tree. It is on pieced and by Pam Cowart. It is machine pieced and machine quilted. Danny White did the quilting, and the pattern is from a quilting magazine. She thought it was an interesting way that they used the traditional block to make this. So you've got it turned. It almost reminds me of a Christmas tree with a little bit of snow on it. This next quilt that we have is called Polka Dotted Star. It is machine pieced and machine quilted. It was on pieced and quilted by Melissa Cryer. She did all the work herself. She said she loves polka dot quilting, and she said the pattern is Sparkle Plenty by Stephanie Dumpling, and she completed it February 2021. If you'll remember, Melissa's the one that had a miscellaneous item, and she talked about using that small scraps to make that other quilt, and so she got 2 for the price of 1. All right, and this next quilt was admired by the First Lady. I did see her looking at it, and she was able to pick out that this is Schnauzer dogs. This is Dog Day Schnauzer. It is owned and pieced by Leslie, and it is quilted by Jean Noki. The pattern is depicted by Sydney, and it says Happy and Colorful Schnauzers, and received a second place ribbon in that category. Congratulations. All right, and the last quilt that we have is machine pieced and machine quilted. It is called Charming Christmas. It is owned and pieced by Pamela Cowart, quilted by Danny White. She said the pattern is Moda, and it's made from a charm pack. So that's going to wrap up our Cherokee National Holiday here for the 72nd year. We would like you to come out, like we said. Chief and Deputy have a family reunion going on. We've got a place safe for you. Come on down. Until next time, we'll see you later.